Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and bring in our next speaker on board, Sana Alavi. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Sana is a PYP coordinator at Qatar Academy. She has also been the education ambassador for the American College of Education, the same institute where she did her Masters of Education in Educational Leadership and Administration. As a leader, Sana stands for her excellence, creativity, service, collaboration, and commitment to schools and all kids. Let's go ahead and welcome her aboard.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I am very excited to be here with all of you virtually, talking about a very important topic that's close to my heart, digital technology, and how to connect imagination to solutions. We're going to be talking a little bit about the evolution of education and what that means right now and what that narrative is at the moment in terms of globally, in terms of education and where we're moving towards. I want to talk a little bit about the title of this presentation. And the reason why I chose imagination is because we cannot have a world progress without having very strong imagination of where we need to go. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But basically what we would be looking at is the tenets between imagination, problems, and solutions. And how do we get from one to the other? Like my lovely MC presented just a minute ago, I am a PYP coordinator working in an international school in Qatar. For those of you who don't know what PYP is, it's the primary years program. And it comes under the International Baccalaureate umbrella. So I'm very lucky and grateful to be a part of that wonderful organization. All right, I like to start every session or every substantial learning that I conduct. I like to start it with my essential questions. And I think that comes from the whole framework of the IB, of thinking about inquiry and really sparking that interest in the learners. And in this regard, you guys are the learners, even though I can't see you. And the landscape of our education has changed dramatically. But we still need to be true to our inquiry process, and we always begin with a question. So for our session for today, it is a very short session, but I still was able to come up with 4 essential questions that we will be looking at. Firstly, we will be defining what the modern teacher is and how that's changed in this landscape. We will be looking at how can we augment our capabilities and lead that back to what I mentioned earlier, connecting the imagination to the solutions with some concrete examples. We will be looking at empathy and the role of empathy, the role of social emotional learning, the role of our students' well-being, in creating solutions to problems. Because if we don't have empathy, then we're not going to have learners who actually care about the solutions or care about the problems. So we'll touch upon that as well. And then lastly, we will be looking at the effectiveness of personalized education and mastery learning in helping students achieve and create solutions. So what pathway are we going to follow to actually bring this to fruition? How are we going to actually reach the solution stage? All right, so let's get started. Okay, so firstly, the role of the modern teacher. Now, a lot of the conversation with COVID had to do with, schools are going to get obsolete and, technology is going to take over. We're not going to have schools, not going to be the way it functions right now. And the biggest thing that, the biggest narrative that I keep seeing is that if you think the job of a teacher is to transit information, or transmit rather, information from their head to the children's heads, inside the heads of the learners, then yes, you're absolutely right. Teachers will be obsolete and YouTube and Google will take over, right? But if you believed that the teacher's role was rather to guide the social process of learning and to inspire and to challenge and to excite and to make kids want to learn, then that will never become obsolete. Okay, and that's I just wanted to set the scene of the session with that, because that's really important to recognize, um, that, you know, yes, traditionally, if you thought that's what the teacher is supposed to do, then yes, that's absolutely going to get phased out. But that's not what a modern teacher or the role of a teacher is, and it's changing with the times. And I just had that little timeline there at the bottom for you to look at, where, you know, we thought that with the advent of the motion pictures that, you know, it's going to be over now, you know, things are going to change dramatically. With the advent of the radio and then the computers and the internet and now the smart boards, you know, the essence of this conversation still remains that nothing replaces a quality teacher. And I want to just bring your attention to a wonderful video by Derek Muller. He is a TED speaker, and he talks about how all of the digital technology and the advancement of digital technology does not, in fact, revolutionize education, but it actually just helps with the evolution of education. Okay, so education is revolving. We are becoming more and more resilient. Look at our children. They are becoming so much more resilient and changing with the times. We're going to move on to our next question, our next essential question, which is, will learning, partnerships, and collaboration augment our capabilities and redefine success? And what will that look like? I want to take you back to what technology actually means, right? It is a desire to confront problems and find solutions. This is what drives people to create. This is what drives people to make things better, right? So the process sort of that gets followed is the imagined world with the created world, with the improvement, and then the delivery. So if you look at a curriculum that has knowledge and understandings and skills, with digital technology, you've got to add another layer of production, of action. Well, what are you doing to improve others, right? And what data do you actually have to say that this is a problem that needs improving, and this is the best route for you to improve it? So the role of the data. Without data, I love this quote, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. Thinking like a computer scientist. How can we get our students to think like computer scientists, where they're actually analyzing data and then making decisions? And not just any decisions, but ethical decisions. Ethical decisions to create solutions to global problems, right? Global problems, you know, thinking locally and, thinking globally and acting locally. That, to me, is the true future with digital technology. I love working with the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals. That gives a great grounding for our students in looking at what are those global issues that are worth tackling through the use of digital technology. A lot of schools are adopting the UN SDGs into their curriculum. And I think that's quite powerful. And there are a lot of resources out there that give you the UN SDGs in a very child-friendly language to be adopted into any grade level and any age. So I would highly recommend that that's one place that becomes a starting point for schools to begin. Well, how do we even introduce children to issues that are substantial in nature? And then staying with that question again, think about some of the most amazing technologies that solved some of the big problems in the world. Think about the elevator. Think about the GPS system. Think about 3D printing. Think about the internet. And then the most latest one, think about the electronic cars. How are those things solving a real world problem? And how is the the process of imagination, the process of idea generation connecting to the solutions? And even having the children think deeply about what problem is this solving, because sometimes children are very quick to come up with solutions. I have a solution for this. Well, what problem is this solving? Really thinking hard about that. The change in structure of the modern workplace is something to consider. We are now going hourly by hour paid tasks, where we work from, let's say, 9 to 5, and you get paid hourly. That has actually shifted the focus away from solutions. It's not just about ticking boxes and saying, yes, I've put in my 8 hours of work for the day and I'm done. But you really, things have shifted from making the projects more solutions focused and getting the job done versus just showing up for 8 hours, even if you don't get anywhere. And I think with COVID, that has reshifted back to the solutions focused tasks and the project based tasks, because we had to kind of shift back to, well, this needs to get done. Doesn't matter how many hours it takes you. And with a lot of people working at home and doing home learning and doing e-learning and doing remote learning, whatever you want to call it, or even blended, I think we had to go back to being more solutions focused rather than just putting in the hours, because nobody actually is physically, checking your hours. You're at home and you have to meet this deadline and you have to get it done. And people have become more solutions focused. So I quite like that. Working towards a deadline, working towards a solution, working towards a bigger project, rather than just putting in 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, or however many hours a day just to check a box off. I do also want to talk a little bit about using technology. I'll skip to this slide and I'll go back. Using technology for the sake of technology. In the same thread of, doing things for the sake of doing things, putting in hours for the sake of putting in hours. With that same thread comes the fact that we cannot just be using technology. Schools can't just be putting and plugging in technology platforms in their fabric just because they want to be 21st century, or they want to be forward thinking, or they want to have some technology. There has to be a purpose tied to why you would bring in any technology, and I'm a big advocate of that. I love that graphic on the right, where it's not just about starting blogs or making animations. It's about the cause that's underneath all of this. So use technology as a tool, not a learning outcome. Just going back to this slide again. What are some forward-thinking ideas out there? We've talked a little bit about the role of the teacher. We've talked a little bit about how it's important to have a strong imagination to be able to find solutions. We talked about what are some substantial solutions or problems to find solutions for. This one report, it's called "Not All That Glitters is Gold." And it was written by, or the research was done by Professor John Hattie, which many of you might know, and it was through the Cognition Education Group. And they're predicting some of the things where we're moving towards as a global digital technologically advanced world. Virtual school campuses, so not physical buildings, but an entire virtual setting, kind of like what we have today with this at this forum and this IBE summit. A robotic coach that predicts the child's behavior. Lifelike audio nudges to discourage negative behavior, where the child is getting that constant nudge as a reminder. Foreign language learning with real-time in-ear translation. That's pretty amazing. And then to pair that with smart lenses that digitally reanimate the lips of a foreign language speaker, because some of the conversation in language learning talks about how the lip reading is so important for a child to acquire a language, and also that the screen actually hinders in language learning. And as humans, our brain is actually programmed to learn language from another person in person, not just on the screen. But this changes things, right? This changes things dramatically. Control devices that switch the lights on or off through just the power of thought, um, which brings the telepathy, makes it more and more possible with Bluetooth pairing. And I love this one, literally downloading new skills from an app store into your brain. I think that those are pretty advanced ideas and thoughts out there of where we're headed. Um, and if any of you are interested in that report, please do try and source it and try and read it, because it is very fascinating. Now we go back to, these are all the solutions that we've just talked about. And I love this quote as well. This is from Simon Breakspear. If this is the solution, then what is the problem? If this is the solution, then what is the problem? Again, it's that idea of jumping to solutions too quickly without really thinking about, is this actually solving a substantial problem? Which brings me to the next essential question of, is technology actually connecting us more, or is it disconnecting us more? And I'll leave that for you to answer. But I will say that, with any relationship, trust is very important. For me to be able to trust my colleagues to do the right thing when I'm not there. For me to be able to say, I can, hey, can you lead the meeting today because I've got to run somewhere else, right? To be able to collaborate together on a document or on a report, to pull our weight and do the best that we can, to be a team together. So those things are very important. But how is that trust built? It is very difficult to build trust in an online forum, or in, across the screen where you haven't seen anybody. And some of the things that people and schools are scheduling in order to tackle this issue is to consciously and deliberately trying to schedule in these trust building activities, like the icebreakers or a team huddle at the beginning of every meeting or at the beginning of the day. Talking about what's going on with your weekend before even jumping into the business of the day. Having a virtual lunch, you bring your food, I'll bring my food, and let's eat together, even if it's across the screen. What was your weekend like? And then just brainstorming ideas together. That gets very challenging online, because you're kind of you're waiting for the next person to talk, and then you kind of wait for your turn because you don't want to disrupt anybody. All of those things hinder that natural process of trust building that happens naturally if you're in front of each other and you're reading each other's body language constantly. So keep that in mind when you're planning lessons on digital technology, or planning in a digital platform. That trust plays a crucial role, and you're going to have to work extra hard to make sure that that trust is being built for our students. On the positive side, the more I've thought about the digital language, the more I see some of the positives that have come. There are many positives, but one particular positive in terms of language is the rise in acquiring the technical language. Okay, the technical language is very crucial in language acquisition, and children are now forced, all of us, even adults, are forced to actually learn that technical language, because that's the language of the digital world. Think about some of the things that our children have easily acquired, which would make it extra difficult in an in-person setting for you to teach to perhaps a language learner. Think about the words such as database and resolution and troubleshoot and spam and firewall or icons or sync. These are quite difficult words to tackle or to make sense of, and they're technical words. But this is something that comes really naturally in a digital setting. Um, Drafting an email versus writing an email, right? The word archive versus saying, "Oh, I'm just going to trash it." Notifications, immersive space. I'm going to perform an advanced search. Thinking about these are my participants instead of folks who came. So these are some of the technical language that have that is the positive of this digital world. And also thinking about some of the words that have been given new meaning because of digital technology and the rise in digital technology because of COVID. Think about the word blended. It has a different meaning. My background has a different meaning. It's my physical or virtual background. I'm going to chat. A chat used to be an in-person talk with voice involved, but it's not anymore. A chat has become very much of the digital text, filters and breakout rooms. So all of these words, they've been given a new meaning, and some of these words, they're quite difficult to acquire, but they have become easy to acquire for children and for adults because of the digital world. Now, I'm just conscious of time, but I do want to talk very quickly about our last essential question, which is the role of the personalized education in helping students achieve, right? I think this is quite important. And some of the things that I've seen, some effective ways that teachers are, using digital technology as a tool and jumping on this bandwagon to really drive, learning forward. Planning has become a lot more intentional, even through the hybrid and the blended, which is the new thing that teachers are tackling, having children online and having children in person. That's quite hard, and that's the new challenge, I think, of COVID. It's not just online, because we were always online. We knew how to do a video chat when everybody was on video chat. We knew how to teach in person with the computer that the child had. But how do you teach half your class, perhaps, that is online and half your class that's in person? And then how do you kind of go about that? Visible thinking routines. We've had to switch all of our thinking to digital formats instead of mapping it out with a pen and paper. We're failing forward, which is what we always wanted to do. We wanted to always be reflective and use that feedback to move forward. And we are having to do that because that's the only way forward, because we're all in it together, and everything is all very new. One of the things that I would also recommend to educators watching today is, you start with a question. Always begin with a question, because that's what boosts that's what will boost your engagement in children. Okay, and then bring your group back and say, well, did we actually answer our essential question? I want to also talk a little bit about some of the strategies that educators are using in personalizing education. For example, creating a playlist of learning on a slide deck, right? It's a very sequential way of learning, and every child can follow that at their own pace. Using multiple modalities and choice, audio, visuals, text, interactive websites, podcasts, lots of sketchnoting. You always do have to pair the digital with the physical paper pencil, and that's what's most powerful. Inviting students to make decisions about how they want to consume the knowledge, how they want to process the knowledge, how they want to practice it, what they want to create. That's quite powerful. I know that choice boards have become very common, but I just can't, can't have enough choice boards for children, quality choice boards. The point is to really mobilize our children to think differently. I won't go too much into personalized, mastery learning, because that's another topic in and of itself, and we're tight on time. But I do want to bring the attention to mastery learning. That is the way towards personalized, skill-based learning. Asking children, what is your spark? What do you want to do? How do you want to do this? What gets you to do something like this at best? And then really thinking about how innovation happens. Um, I love this graphic of how the innovation begins from the inside out, not the outside in. It's the why. What's the purpose? Going back to, if this is the solution, what's the problem? What is your why? And then what is your how? Well, how are you going to follow? How are you going to create that solution? And then what is going to be that solution to that problem? And I'm going to leave you with this last slide from me. Education needed a fundamental change before COVID, and it needs it even more so now. Are we simply coping at the moment using technology, or are we actually advancing and evolving? And what is something that you will never go back to as an educator? And that's it from me. I know we went a little bit over time, but thank you very much for listening. And I hope to cross paths with you again sometime in the virtual world. Sure. All right, so there's a question about would dependency on learning approached through digitalized, reduced post-COVID? Absolutely. I think, a lot of the educators are thinking now if we're ever going to go back to, post-COVID, once COVID is over, do we really need to have digital technology, still hanging around? Well, I think the answer is digital technology is not going anywhere. And it's what we do with it and what aspects of digital technology do we use and keep, and what do we say, yeah, we actually didn't really care for this too much anyway, and we were just kind of forced to use this. But yeah, no, absolutely, I think it will definitely reduce, but then it might evolve, but not go away. Do you think digitalization will have an impact on kids' interpersonal skills and social skills? And if yes, how do we overcome this hurdle? That's a very good question. And I think, only time will tell, but, some of the strategies that I see effective teachers are using are putting in a lot of time for SEL components where children are connecting with each other and with the teachers, and with their other peers. And keeping up with those interpersonal skills. Again, I think the point is that it will evolve. I don't think it will ever it will ever decrease in quality. And who are we to assess the quality, and how do we assess the quality of interpersonal skills, right? Because our viewpoint of what interpersonal skills is now becoming outdated because things are moving so fast. So that's my humble opinion. Throughout history, after a global crisis, a new era of thinking begins. COVID has definitely increased the pace and accessibility of digitalization in education. Should we be concerned that as the world becomes more diversified, decentralized, and dependent on technology, this would lead to higher risk of unmanageable failures in either the physical or social systems that underpin survival? How do we deal with this fear? This is a very deep question. I think, the quick answer that comes to my mind is thinking about a baby, a 9-month-old or a 10-month-old baby whose objective is to try and walk. Okay, that baby is learning how to walk. To that baby, the changes that the baby faces, and this is my early years, passion coming in play here. the way that baby perceives the world has opened up, right? The baby has a new skill where it can be more mobile. Think like a baby. How is this baby going to feel if the failures, the 10 times that it falls, it doesn't get back up and tries again, right? And I think digital technology and how it's increased its presence in the education world is kind of like a baby, and we're just sort of tackling with this new skill and this new world that's opened up to us, and we can't just give it up. We can't just say, you know what, we're not going to take this forward. But I think we need to evolve with the times and still keep true to what matters the most, those global problems that need solutions, that inquiry thinking, the SEL with each other, taking care of ourselves, right? Is there any more questions? Yep, thank you very much for joining me today. It was a pleasure, and I would like to thank the organizers as well. It was a very well planned and well thought out event, and I hope that the audience, learned a lot and took lots of skills in their little notebooks with them. So thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing the insights. I am sure everybody is delighted to have you, and the insights are going to be helpful on a longer run. Thank you so much once again for being with us.